Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you in the room, thank you for continuing from the morning. Welcome to our session on fire load and flammable materials in modern buildings. How can flame retardants contribute? My name is Esther Ajaman Burdu, and I'm honored to serve as your moderator for today's event. We're delighted to have you join us both in person and online. The hybrid format enables us to connect with a diverse audience in all over the world, as well as right here in Brussels. And we have stakeholders from across all disciplines for this critical topic. Okay, so today, before we continue, we would just like to have a kind reminder and just a kind notice that we abide by European competition and compliance laws. So throughout the duration of the session, that we stay away from competitive information exchange. So just a kind reminder about that. So we move on to the agenda. So today we have an exceptional lineup of speakers, each offering unique insights on fire safety challenges, the role of flame retardants, and opportunities to enhance resilience in modern buildings. So let me briefly introduce our distinguished speakers to you. First off, we have Christoph Biscop, and from the European Fire Safety Alliance, and he will kick off by discussing the biggest fire safety challenges in Europe. Then Thomas Futera from Chimique Fabry Budenheim and PIMFA Vice Chair, will explore the role of flame retardants in modern buildings, followed by Eric Guillaume from Effectus. He will delve into the key findings from the Grenfell Tower, Grenfell Tower Inquiry Phase 2. Then Susanna Draganic from the University of Novi Sad will reflect on how fire load and material flammability have changed over the last 50 years. Then last but not the least, Heike Vananen from the European Commission DG GROW will wrap up with an overview of fire safety activities in the European Commission. A few housekeeping rules. Before we begin, I would like to remind everybody to silence their devices. If you have any electronic devices, also for those of you online, thank you. And for in-person participants, if time permits, we might take a question after the speaker, but we have a dedicated question and answer session. So we will take the questions during the question and answer sessions. For online participants, kindly feel free to put your questions in the chat. Our online moderator, Francesca Filippini, will ensure that your contributions are shared during the Q&A session. It's a very tight session, so let's begin. I would like to tell you a little bit about PIMFA because we're before you as PIMFA, the European Trade Federation for the Phosphorus, Inorganic, and Nitrogen Flame Retardant Producers. We were established in 2009. We have approximately 32 members, and they're both manufacturers and users of flame retardants. And PIMFA is also global. We have a North American chapter as well as a China chapter. So PIMFA members have a shared vision of continuously improving the health and environmental profile of their flame retardants. This is a commitment that they together come and commit to as a mission for our organization. It's very important to our members, so we'd like to highlight that. And this is the PIMFA team. We're very happy to be a part of today's event. and our logo. And this is how you can reach us. Okay. So once again, a big thank you for all of you being here. Let's get started with our first speaker, Christoph, who will discuss the biggest fire safety challenges in Europe. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Esther, for this kind introduction. I'm going to highlight few EU fire safety challenges, but please let me start with a few information about the organization I represent, European Fire Safety Alliance. First of all, who we are. We are the independent alliance of fire professionals, and our mission is to reduce the risk from fire, especially in domestic area. One in domestic area because the vast majority of fire fatalities are recorded in this type of building. And we also believe that in Europe, most fire victims in homes are preventable. So how do we put our mission into life? First of all, we created an international network of some actors who share our values and who also want to improve fire safety and put it higher in a political agenda. Secondly, we defined the biggest EU fire safety challenges, and which was expressed in the European Fire Safety Action Plan. In fact, the first evidence and knowledge-based fire safety agenda for Europe. By the way, on your tables, but also very soon online, you can find this leaflet with the revised European Fire Safety Action Plan, which was the follow-up of the last year evaluation of this plan. And we organize many EU-wide fire safety initiatives. For example, European Fire Safety Week, we all participate in today, European Fire Safety Award or European Smoke Alarm Day. Okay, why do we need to act on fire safety? Just a few basic information. First of all, every year, only in the EU, we record at least 5,000 fire deaths and around 70,000 injuries. But what is very important, not in Europe, but in the EU, because if we want to consider all Europe, we need to multiply it minimum by 3. And what is also important, behind all of those figures are people. It's not just numbers. There are people who suffer because of the fire, people who died, who lost their homes, or who will carry scars for the rest of their lives. And the biggest tragedy is that the majority of these fires, and especially fire deaths, are preventable. Here you can see the quotation from the report of Mr. Martin Moore, who was the chairman of the public inquiry into the Grenfell Tower fire. The simple truth is that the deaths that occurred were all avoidable. If we remember, 72 people died in this fire. Okay, and now I'm going to focus only on a few challenges, but they are, I could say, real game changers. The first one, energy transition. Of course, energy transition brings a lot of benefits to all of us. Sometimes we are even not fully aware that we benefit from this process. But at the same time, it brings new and sometimes change fire risks. And it's not difficult to imagine what would happen if we install, for example, PV panels, EV charging points, heat pumps, energy storage system in our house, and it will be installed by incompetent installer, and it will be connected to the electrical installation, which is obsolete, which is not totally adopted to these purposes, probably it's not difficult to guess what will happen. Another item, it is also the element of the energy transition, in fact, but I separated it here on purpose. Modern method of constructions, new building materials and new construction methods aiming to achieve higher energy performance and sustainability also have impact on fire dynamic and make fire environment less predictable. Once again, here at this point, there is a really high risk that energy renovated building will get more dangerous for people who are inside of this building than before the renovation. And in such situation, the whole process does not make sense. So, and finally, aging demographics. Aging demographics, especially in Europe, our society is aging very rapidly, and it creates a very unique fire safety challenges, and it requires also tailored approach or attention to those people. But we need to remember that very often those people are also affected by energy poverty or substandard housing or disabilities, which makes those people even more vulnerable than before. And here, in fact, there is a role for the flame retardants, which belong to the available effective solutions for extending the time for safe evacuation by avoiding or at least slowing down the development of fire. And many people ask the question, what can the European Union do to improve fire safety? First of all, we should remember that fire safety is primarily addressed by building codes, and building codes are a national competence, and undoubtedly it should remain like this. Member states should have the, let's say, right to shape their own regulations on the issue. But what is very important, building codes don't cover many important fire safety aspects. For example, fire awareness, some elements of prevention, fire statistics, research, market surveillance, or information exchange. And based on our experience, we quickly noticed that the EU institutions have both, on one side, potential, and also they should be interested to coordinate and support member states, because fire safety impacts and is impacted by several of the EU fire safety, by the EU core objectives, mainly concerning the energy transition and the new one policy on housing, but also you can see here like tourism, environment, human health, or consumer protection. And European Union institutions offers also a unique perspective which can enrich and strengthen the development of knowledge in the field of fire safety and help to address common challenges across the member states. Because most challenges and most fire safety problems are in fact common, are the same across the all European Union. And here you can see some examples like harmonization of fire statistics, which is collected in member states, or shared fire safety research, or development of fire safety competencies, or exchange of experiences. It could be really very helpful for member states. And what is very important, all these activities are possible without challenging subsidiarity principle. What means that EU could develop, coordinate, and support some solutions which next could be implemented by member states. And we have probably a very good example, like when we speak about the energy transition, and in many countries there are, for example, problems with fire safety of garages with battery electric vehicles, and they are waiting how should they provide proper level of fire safety. And the European Union has been developing guidance on the topic. It will be very useful. And what is very important to underline, so that innovation, there is nothing unusual that innovation leads to risk. But the problem is when the risk level is too high. And I'm pretty sure that we are at this stage at the moment in the EU. That's why some intervention is necessary on this area. So that's why, based on the conclusions of the last year edition of the European Fire Safety Week, and considering what I said before, at the end of last year, we developed and introduced EU Fire Safety Manifesto 2024-2029, entitled Keeping EU Citizens Fire Safe in All Buildings. It was launched on 14 December last year. It is supported also by the campaign Keep EU Fire Safe, and it is already supported by 15 MEPs and many other relevant stakeholders. And what is very important to underline, that this manifesto was a collaborative effort of 25 different organizations working on the improvement of fire safety in Europe. And in this manifesto, we call on the EU for the European fire safety strategy to support member states, coordinate and supplement their actions when needed. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Up next, we have Thomas Futera, PINFA Vice Chair. Thomas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Esther, for your kind introduction, and thank you very much for being here at this event. I would like to speak about fire load and flammable materials in modern buildings. How can flame retardants contribute? But before I'm going to answer this question, I would like to introduce myself a little bit more and PINFA. My name is Thomas Futterer. I'm working for Chemische Fabrik Budenheim, which here is on the left side in the second row. Chemische Fabrik Budenheim is a company who is doing specialty chemicals, who is developing specialty chemicals, also like flame retardants, phosphorus and nitrogen-based flame retardants. And I'm there responsible for innovation for flame retardants, but as well I'm PINFA Vice Chair. Yeah, but coming back to the question, how can flame retardants contribute? I would like to ask you the question, if you know this building and who is the architect? Anyone knows it? That doesn't seem the case. It's a very futuristic building. It's a very nice building, and it's in Belgium. It's in Liège. And the architect is Santiago Calatrava. It's a very famous Spanish-US architect. And you can find his neo-futuristic buildings with this biomorph look in many countries. And I have selected this building here because, first of all, it's in Belgium. And secondly, it's representing the situation. The building is made for humans. And it's, of course, made for communication space. It has functionality and design. It has many different materials. There's a lot of movement, transport, logistics, and of course, it's a lot of energy. We have heard that before. There's fuel, there's electricity, and there are burnable materials. So overall, we have a high complexity in such a building, but we need to take care about the well-being of people, and we need to take care about the safety in such buildings. But if you look to reality, we see that there are numbers of fires per year and million population, like 7 fire deaths per million population, 37 fire injuries, and 800 fires per year. So this is representing 1% of the GDP worldwide, which is reflecting the GDP of Belgium. And this is a number we cannot really ignore. But looking at fire regulations for buildings in Europe, we have standards, and that's very good already. It's the EU Construction Products Regulation, and construction materials must be tested and labeled according to this EU Construction Product Regulation. And it covers materials like balcony, internal finishing, paints, cables, carpets, and so on. But it does not contain all materials which are present in buildings. And here flame retardants play an important role because these flame retardants are enabling materials to achieve these CPR fire and smoke specifications. To remember you, PIN flame retardants are phosphorus inorganic nitrogen flame retardants. Yeah, and here on the right hand you see the Shard. It's another futuristic building which is in London. And also these buildings need fire safety because there's still about 5,000 people dying in fires, mostly inside of buildings. And the fire risks are increasing because the fire load in this building are increasing. There are flammable materials in the buildings. There are more sustainable materials in buildings which also need to be fire protected and fire safe. There's more electrical equipment in buildings. Buildings are getting taller, and there's also an aging population. So the fire performance standards need to become more demanding, or will be becoming more demanding. And that's a task also for flame retardants and for the flame retardants producer to achieve this fire safety with the products developed and provided. And PIN flame retardants provide already today such fire safety solutions. One very important aspect of flame retardants, and we heard that in the presentation before already, is that flame retardants are reducing the time to flash over. This means people have time to discover the fire. They can also alert other people. They can take decisions. They can take own actions to extinguish the fire. So this winning time is very important, is a very important role what flame retardants are having. They give the time for people to escape and more time for these activities shown here. PIN flame retardants are reducing the risk of ignition and the fire spread of many plastic material, also textiles, and that's resulting in a more available escape time for the occupants. And here's more wider summary why flame retardants play a crucial role in modern buildings. So there is not only the increased escape time, there's also the fire prevention and fire control, because flame retardants stop fire or prevent fire from the very first ignition moment. For example, if you have a shortcut in a cable. As well, flame retardants are decreasing the smoke emissions. Smoke is responsible for many fatalities in fires. And as well, it's very important that flame retardants are reducing the total heat release. And with reducing the heat release, you can also reduce the damage if you have a fire. So here on this slide again, the beautiful building of the railway station in Liège in Belgium with an outlook to the future. So higher fire safety standards are very important, and there's a EU fire safety regulation in building and construction which must be maintained or even improved. So there are regulatory challenges also for chemicals, for flame retardants, and they are ahead of us and they must also be solved. And but nevertheless, PIN flame retardants are providing recognized fire safety solutions which can be further developed for future challenges. And therefore, PINFA members continue to develop new products to improve their performance and minimize health and environmental risks. Yeah, the future challenges, we also heard about it. E-mobility, for example, the increased use of electric vehicles, for example, parking garages, or cars which are close to buildings. They are also having certain risks. The digitalization, the growing integration of digital technologies in buildings demand higher energies. So the consumption of electrical power will raise, and this also will raise the risk for fires. So at the end, we have a need for enhanced safety, and all these factors collectively demand even higher fire safety measures and innovation. And as an example, for example, the European Union has put the framework Safe and Sustainable by Design for innovation. And this framework is guiding through more sustainable materials, which can be used in the future. And we as PINFA, we are supporting this with our activities. And we believe that's the way forward for a safer future of our buildings. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We will, yeah, please keep your questions. We'll have a Q&A session for questions. We will move on to Eric Guillaume from Effectus, and yeah, please welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. So I will deal about Grenfell Tower inquiry and especially the report of phase 2 that has been issued end of September. So the things I will present are not especially, thank you, are not especially my views. They are the views from the inquiry, and we can discuss on them and understand what was the intention. But just keep aware that this report has been released 7 years after the tragedy. It means that every word has been weighted, and every responsibility that will be faced in it. This is something that has been written, not in a hurry just after the fire. It's really issued from a complete inquiry and a reflection. And so it's very important to have that in mind. You will see later. So just a few words about Effectis. I will go very quickly, but we are a company that provides services in fire and explosion around Europe, and from testing to certification analysis at the level of product, but also at the level of building. And yeah, these are just the different locations where we are with 8 laboratories in Europe. So mainly, I will say Western Europe. And this is just some pictures of some of our laboratories, but I will go not in detail. So first of all, we will just go back to what happened to Grenfell. So the road to the disaster. So as I mentioned, what we will focus on is this report. This is phase 2 report. Some of you perhaps read it. It's more than 113 chapters, so it's a book like that. And there's a summary report. It's quite well summarized in about 80 pages. And I will try to summarize what is inside this summary report, but not only, you will see. And as I said, it has been made 7 years after, and it has been made in great detail, and it had been coordinated by Sir Martin Moorbeek, that made all this coordination. So it's an enormous work, and it's a public inquiry. So it means that everything that is in it and everything that led to any conclusion was totally public. And the objective is really to understand and to focus on preventing such a tragedy to occur again. So Just a few words. Everybody saw these pictures, but so it was in June 2017. You may have discussion on the number of fatalities. You will find normally this is 71 plus 8 that were not found. And it seems that now it's more 72 plus 7 that were not found. So they still have some difficulties to find the real number of fatalities in the end. So you will have different values from different sources. And so it's a 24-story residential building. I didn't mention high-rise or not high-rise because, as mentioned by Christophe, it will depend on the national regulation. So in UK, it's a high-rise dwelling. In some other countries, it will may be another category. So we'll see. And it's really in the west of London, and the cause is, I will say, a very simple fire in a kitchen. So something that may occur in the life of a building, something that may occur in every life of any building, but here, what made starting from something that is, I would not say insufficient, but insignificant, small fire inside an apartment to something that is a catastrophic fire. So the fire started on the 4th floor and it spread rapidly to the facade by the exterior. And we had the first propagation, a vertical propagation during 30 minutes. And at the time, so imagine that each story is 6 apartments, and you have the same floor plan for every story. And at that time, we have a column of fire from all the facade in a limited part, vertical, and we have no fatality in all these apartments because everybody is at home, sees the fire on the window and go out. But after, you have an horizontal propagation of this fire, and this horizontal propagation trapped people around in their apartments. And we will see why, because it's also a question of materials, it's a question of penetration of fire, it's a question also of prior to disaster, why we have such material on the facade, but also during disaster, how it was managed by firefighters. And this point is very important because this is the first time I see an inquiry where they focus also on the responsibility of firefighters. So the choice of materials was important in that. And there are a number of failures. So for sure, failure in compartmentation inside the building, failure in evacuation procedures also. But it was not a single event. We had previous cases with such kind of materials, and including ones in UK. And the use of ACM panel were already highlighted in some fires with fatalities, including one that is well documented, which is in La Canal House in 2009, so in London also. And this fire is very important because it has been judged, and the responsibility of firefighters in their procedure was highlighted for this fire. And we will see later, but it's very important in the complete understanding of the fire, of the responsibilities after this fire, that they had previous alerts. The regulator also was alerted from this fire, and they didn't change the regulation. So it's a point also that is important on, I will say, you will see later, but the responsibility of regulators facing the different events. There's also a controversy in the regulation itself, how it's built in UK, because first they have a building permit. It's called Approved Document B. It covers fire safety, and there's a section before that covers the building envelope, and so covers the facade. And what is highlighted in the report is that there's a vague wording of that. So it's not precise enough it leads to too many interpretations, too many possibilities of interpreting in the way it arranges you. So Martin Mobic says, okay, this document, this is the base of the application of the regulation, but it's not precise enough, so we can have misunderstanding. We had several reports during this inquiry, especially technical reports from Professor Bisbee and Professor Torero, and they demonstrated that the ACM cladding was the primary key of the propagation, and there was an interaction between this ACM cladding and the insulant, but mainly because it was insulant, not necessarily because it was a combustible insulant. And so it means that to understand the behavior of the facade, you have to understand not only individual components, but also the assembly, the system, and how it works. And it's very important. I think, Eiki, you will deal with facades later, but it's very important because for that point, the facade is not a construction product, and it's nationally regulated. So what is a facade? It will depend on, if we ask in the room, everybody will have a different definition in this country. So both experts that concluded that also they agreed on this performance, and they rejected also some tests that have been asked by the police, the Metropolitan Police of London, for the inquiry and conducted at BRE, because they felt it was not representative enough of the situation. So it means that police used millions to make some tests, and they were rejected by this inquiry. And for the main conclusions, we reached at effectively the same conclusions since 2019 by some tests and also some numerical modeling of the facade. And we were able also to see what were the key parameters. For example, if you change the insulant, if you change the cladding, what is the effect on the overall safety? So then the report goes to each player and their responsibility. So as I said, we can comment on all of them, but it's not my personal view, it's really what is in the report. First of them, it's Studio E. Studio E was the architect of the Grenfell refurbishment, and they are really attacked in terms of their incompetence dealing with fire. So it means that they choose to change from zinc cladding to ACM-PA cladding without any safety concern, just for cost reasons. And this decision was made totally, so it means that it's an architect. We can say, okay, he has perhaps no competence in fire safety, but he has to know and to address to proper companies or advisors and so on, but he is responsible of the choice that is made for the construction. And here, it's highlighted that they were so incompetent that they were not conscious that they had to ask to someone. So it's really, so it means that if we generalize, we have to, I would say to architects, to educate architects. We will see, I think I will mention education very often in that, but professional education of people like architects, they don't do art, they have to ensure the safety. And so it's very important here. And another, so it's in the order of appearance in the report. It's not necessarily the level of responsibility that is highlighted, but also BBA, so British Board of Agreement, is highlighted, and they were responsible of certifying building materials and including this facade system as it is. And in fact, they were just considered as, in the inquiry, as collecting just data without analyzing it. So it was like a certification on nothing on air, because they were not going inside the report and understanding if it was covering the risk and the other parameters of construction. So something like an empty agreement. And so they failed to communicate the risk of the product. There's a responsibility that is highlighted on the government. So we saw other fires. We saw this Lacanal fire several years before. We had other alerts with other fires in other countries and not in UK. And so the UK government, so the English government, because this is a English regulation, you have not the same in all 4 nations of UK. And they missed the opportunity to regulate combustible materials. They also still used, in parallel to the European system, former national classifications. So you can go in deep in the report. You will see about class 0 or class 1 results of tests for these materials that were used. So this is a former UK test method, which is stated in BS 476 part 6 and 7. And so it was not adapted to represent the risk of such kind of facade system. As soon as this system has been reproduced and tested during the inquiry according to facade test, it failed. So, so it means also that you cannot summarize the behavior of facade to some component tests limited in size without considering the size effect, the mounting effect, and all the system effect. So it's very important because here they say, okay, the government missed all these points. They just say, okay, you have to have a class 0 of your material and it's a surface test on small components. So it's really unadapted. Exova at that time, it was a company that made the assessment of fire safety during the Grenfell refurbishment. So they made notes, and they failed to highlight to the architect the risk associated with a change from zinc to ACMPA. And so what is highlighted in the report is really the lack of competence and the lack of robustness of the analysis that has been provided. BRE, so BRE is a famous institution, laboratory in the domain. So it has been from several years changed from public body to what they call charity in UK. And they are really cited a lot of times in the report, especially because the inquiry says, okay, the laboratory was too friendly with its customers, too friendly to pass the test, to explain how to pass the test. It has to be more independent. It has to just say if it pass or fail. So it's very important for all laboratories, all testing laboratories in Europe. We have to be independent from the product. And so this is very important because it's really a public body at the beginning. And here, the responsibility is highlighted as they allowed some systems to pass the tests without giving the good advices for the safety. They just gave advices to pass the test. Oh, I'm too late. There's a very important responsibility that is highlighted on the different construction product manufacturers that were especially on the facade. So we can cite them or not. It's not the question. The question is, what is the ethics in the community? What is the ethics for construction products supplier and so on? When you sell thousands and thousands square meter of cladding for a tower, you know it's for a tower, it's for a high-rise tower, so you know if your product is adapted or not. And here they just say, okay, the industry just wanted to sell. They didn't want it to give advices and give the right product or say that their product was not adapted. So, so there's a lack of ethic. And it's very important because people have to think about that. There's also a question of constancy of performance. So we can deal with that. some of the products or the systems that are not necessarily covered by any certification rule. And so in this case, how you can ensure the consistency of performance. So all these points were highlighted. London Fire Brigade. So as I said, the report focused largely on firefighters. Prior to the fire and after the fire. So prior to the fire, they say, okay, you had previous fires. In the judgment from Lacanal House fire, they were asking to change their tactic because they had a stay put tactic on dwelling. And at that time, in 2009, the judge said, your tactics are not adapted. And they didn't change anything. And you can go see all the videos of the interviews. You had the chief of Fire Brigade of London that is in the tribunal and that is tearing, just saying that, yes, they didn't change anything. And she was fired for that. So it's very, very important. And just because there was a previous event, they were asking to change the tactics and they didn't do anything. And during the fire, the stay put strategy was not understood. So it's written in the UK regulation at that time, if you have a dwelling fire, just maintain people in their apartments during the time firefighters fight the fire. Okay, it's written like that, I think, in almost all European countries. But what is not understood is that it means that there's no fire in the compound, so in the level where the people are in their apartment. But here you have 20 levels in fire at the same time. So the only solution you have is to evacuate. So you have to understand that you cannot fight this fire. You have to evacuate everybody. And with the analysis they had on this fire, they had a window of about 1 hour with sufficiently clean stairs and lobbies to evacuate. And they didn't take this decision. And after it was too late. So, and their responsibility, honestly, this is the first time I see that. It's written in the report that firefighters killed 2/3 of the victims. So it's incredible to write that. It's really to push them, to explain them, you didn't understood your own tactic. So it's not written properly, you are not trained properly, and you have to change that. And in the future, we have to consider that we can evacuate high-rise buildings. We have to. It depends on the event for sure, but we have to be able to analyze and to decide if we have to evacuate or not and how to evacuate, level by level or group by group. But we have to have that in mind. So there are some recommendations in the report. For sure, they ask for stronger regulation and especially for high-rise building materials. The need of independent testing bodies and clearer product certification. So it's really for BRE and BBA that I cited, but it's for everybody in Europe. Recommendation for improved industry practice, as I said, not just selling a construction product, but understanding what you are selling and advising properly. And fire safety assessment in residential building, and better also attention for vulnerable occupants. When we say we will go to an evacuation of a building, we have to consider the vulnerable occupants. And modernization of the fire risk management in high-rise buildings, prior to the fires and also during the fires. What is the strategy when you arrive at the building during a fire? What is the strategy? Do you evacuate? How you evacuate? And so on. And so a few conclusions about that. So now, next steps, in fact. So what Martin Morbig says is that the implementation of these recommendations is essential to prevent future tragedies. We have still, everywhere in Europe, some buildings with such kind of materials that are not adapted. This is what we saw in Valencia recently, but also in Milano, in Torre del Mar. So we had several other alerts in other countries. So we have to take that seriously for existing buildings and for the new ones. There's a need of collaboration between all the players. and especially an adaptation of the fire safety standards in the different high-rise buildings. So that's all. As I said, it's very out-pushing. What are the conclusions of this report? But we have to take that as a lesson for the future and the future of our regulations at each level, from material to firefighters and so on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have to bring it down. Thank you very much, Eric. Very appreciated. Please keep your questions. We will have a Q&A session coming up. So next we have Susanna. Please come and give us your case study. We have another case study. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank organizer for invitation to participate in this session. I'm very happy and glad to be here and share our research with you. Well, my name is Suzana Draganic, and I am an assistant professor at Faculty of Technical Sciences at University of Novi Sad in Serbia. My background is in civil engineering with PhD focused on building materials, fire safety engineering, and energy efficiency in buildings. Today I will be discussing how fire load and material flammability have changed in buildings over the last 50 years and why this has not led to multiplication of fires and fire deaths. This presentation is actually based on a research that I conducted with my colleagues, Professor Igor Jolev and Mirjana Laban, where we assessed fire load densities in contemporary residential buildings in Serbia. The objective was to understand how increase in fire load affects fire development in modern dwellings and to evaluate safety implications related to these changes. Before we dive into the detail of our study, I would like to briefly introduce the Faculty of Technical Sciences. Our faculty is one of the largest and most developed faculties in the region. It is established in 1960s and has 13 departments, 31 research centers, 126 laboratories, and more than 17,000 students and 1,200 employees. We offer a wide range of study programs across fields, and as you can see, one of them is disaster risk management and fire safety at the Department of Civil Engineering and Geodesy. Actually, this study program was modernized a few years ago under Erasmus Plus program, where we had help from Lund University, Technical University of Denmark, Aalborg University, and also University of Žilina and University in Skopje. So, over the past few decades, residential fires have undergone significant changes driven by several factors. Firstly, the size of homes and their spatial layouts have evolved with open space concepts and larger rooms that alter fire dynamics. Additionally, the use of synthetic, highly combustible materials has increased both in building construction and interior furnishings. This shift means that today's homes contain greater amount of flammable materials, leading to higher fire load densities. Previous studies and also the case studies that were presented yesterday have shown that these factors affect how quickly fires develop and spread, and also create new challenges for firefighting. So higher fire loads result with fires that are hotter, faster spreading, and more intense than those in traditional dwellings, impacting both the safety of occupants and also the response time available for firefighters. The focus of our study was assessment of fire load densities in 3-room family apartments located in residential buildings and houses in Serbia. We surveyed 120 apartments, and we used a combination of weighting and inventory method to collect data. According to Serbian standard, fire load is calculated based on a volume of combustible substances and their specific densities and net calorific values. Our findings were notable. We noticed that fire load density in these apartments has doubled in last 40 years, rising from 300 to 700 megajoules per square meter of floor area. This increase is primarily due to the widespread use of synthetic materials and also changing trends in interior design that prioritize comfort and aesthetic, but often use more flammable materials. We compared our results with other research results and also the prescribed fire load density values given in various standards. And as you can see, our values are comparable, are similar to values presented in Eurocode 1, which are based on 30 to 40-year-old fire load density studies. The fire load values that were obtained in the studies conducted in USA in 1970s and in Canada 20 years ago are comparable to results that were obtained in studies in Serbia in 1985 and in Finland in 1966. In order to understand the impact of this increased fire load, we conducted numerical study using ozone computer code. The parametric analysis simulated fire behavior under various conditions, including different compartment heights and opening sizes, and also the variation in fire load densities. We concluded that higher fire load leads to the higher duration of fire. In fact, now fully developed fire stage lasts 2.5 times longer than it did 40 years ago. We noticed increased in temperature, in maximum temperature in compartment. That increases around 10% compared to the past. So we have increased fire load and higher maximum temperatures. This can actually lead to increased heat penetration to the structural members, causing the higher degradation of their mechanical properties and also increasing the risk to the building structural stability. So despite these changes in fire load and flammability, we haven't actually seen corresponding increase in number of fire fatalities or incidents. This can be attributed to few key factors. First, fire safety codes and building regulation over the years have improved, requiring stricter fire protection measures. Also, advances in fire detection and suppression systems have played a crucial role, as has the implementation of fire-safe building designs and materials. Also, we have increased of public awareness of safety and also the evolution of firefighting technology that make them available to respond more effectively to modern fire challenges. So in conclusion, our research highlights the importance of continuous monitoring and updating of fire data, of data on fire load to keep pace with the changes in building practices and building materials. So future fire safety research and policy adjustments are actually essential to adapt to modern fire risks and also to ensure that our homes remain safe as building technologies evolve. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope that this presentation provided insight into the evolving fire risks in modern dwellings and also the steps how to mitigate these risks. Thank you very much.
Okay. I will leave the floor to Heikki.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Heikki Väänänen from European Commission DG GROW. And with the next few slides, I will try to explain what we do in DG GROW in relation to fire safety issues. It's not everything that Commission is doing. So we heard yesterday about initiatives in DG ENER in relation to your EPPD directive. We will hear about a webinar tomorrow about activities in DG MOVE in relation to EVs and covered car parks. So, but this is basically where we, what is our angle to the fire safety issues. I'm also referring to some of the colleagues in other DGs in relevant parts. Like Christoph mentioned in the beginning, the fire safety is a member state competence fully. I'm not going to go there further than that. But there is, of course, EU level regulation that has a fire safety aspect or angle to it. What is very relevant for us and under our responsibility is the construction product regulation, which is a piece of regulation for internal market. So the focus and the objective of the construction product regulation is specifically creation of internal market for construction products. Now, this regulation then, when it's materialized by product-related standards, has, of course, also the fire safety aspects. But I want to emphasize that CPR is not safety regulation, it's market regulation as such. Now, even though the competence for fire safety is at the level of the member states, this doesn't mean that there could not be a certain level of coordination and activities also at the EU level. And I'm going to come back to that at the later stage, what it means from the DG GROW point of view. This is a big picture of our activities. We have the fully regulatory activities, which is related to implementation of the construction product regulation. And at the other end of the continuum, we have fire information exchange platform, which is completely non-regulatory voluntary activity with interested parties to come and exchange knowledge and experience. In between, we have specific projects that we run, and these tend to lean to other sides of the coin, and I'm going to run through them, what they mean in practical terms. Now, what is currently important for those of you who follow the construction product regulation and its development is that the revision of the regulation is going to be published in the coming days. And when it's published, after 20 days, it will enter into force. And then there is a 1 year period when basically two regulations are running fully hand in hand. And after 1 year, there is a date of application of the new CPR, which means that everything that is new coming at the end of 2025 will need to follow the new CPR. And under the umbrella of new CPR, there's a important tool which we call CPR key, and this is a process through which DG Grow is now updating all the product-related standards. It will take a lot of time, of course, but the work has already been started and will continue in the coming years. For the new CPR, nothing from the fire safety point of view, nothing much changes. So fire safety is still one of the basic work requirements of construction works, which forms the basis of the product standards that then will support the internal market for construction products. The text, when you get it at hand, is more elaborated. So there are more text in the current one. It was basically a couple of bullet points, but now the text has a little bit more flesh around the bones. But at the end of the day, all the existing aspects that we have now with the product standards like reaction to fire, resistance to fire, external exposure of roofs and facades, I will mention that more in detail in a few minutes, are still relevant and will be implemented in the harmonized product standards. Now let's take a look at the projects that we have had. We had the first phase of European Fire Statistics project, which ended at the end of 2022, if I remember well. We have already heard a call of the importance of the harmonized fire statistics, and this was the first, let's say, a feasibility study on the issue. What should be the way forward? Now, European Parliament has reserved an envelope for continuing this work in a preparatory action, and we hope to launch that preparatory action in the first half of 2025, which means that we will actually test the concepts that were developed in the feasibility phase of this development in actual application. Another important project is facade fire performance test methodology development project. This project ended, or it was finalized just a couple of weeks ago. The report, the final report and the executive summary of the report is available on the project website already. It has not yet been published by the Publication Office of the EU, but it will be. And the next step or the follow-up for this project will be that in the context of the CPR acquis process, GROW is going to initiate the harmonized or horizontal acquis group for fire issues. And one of the first tasks for this group will be the development of a standardization request for the testing method of the facades. And once we have this testing method standardized, then it can be implemented in the product standards or the relevant product standards, like for example for ethics. It would be then one of the essential characteristics to be looked at. And this work will start in the beginning of 2025. Another project which we are doing in collaboration with the DG JRC, so Joint Research Center, is to look into the fire safety engineering situation in different European countries in order to see what would be needed in order to support the more spread of the fire safety engineering practices in the member states and in their respective building codes. And here you have also a link to the very first technical report that was prepared by the colleagues in the JRC. Now, coming to the non-regulatory sphere of our activities, Fire Information Exchange Platform, or FIEP, as we know it. It was initiated in 2017 after the Grenfell fire or tragedy, and with the aim of exchanging experiences and knowledge on fire safety practices, with a specific focus on domestic fire safety. And you will find these, let's say, 5 broad areas of interest that the FIEP is focusing on in its activities here. So you will see the fire statistics are there, new products and high-rise buildings are there, experience exchange from fire accidents, etc., etc. So this is the, let's say, the basic field where we are working in this context, but it's not limited only to this. So if there are possibilities to learn from different areas, we will of course take a look at those aspects as well. And a little bit more in concrete, these are the webinars that FIEP has organized between 21 and 24. The very last one, installation and maintenance of construction products with fire performance relevance, will be organized next week, Friday. But you will see that there have already been an exchange on interesting and important topics that we have been discussing in this or during this week, like photovoltaic panels or e-vehicles and car parks. Maybe to mention specifically these e-vehicles, it was done in collaboration with DG Move, who's now working on the guidance which will be published under the EPPD directive as a guidance for member states. And FIEP was also active in, let's say, I could call it as a validation panel for the findings from the work that has been done with the consultants and in the DG Move. So FIEP contributed to for example, to the review of existing rules and regulations. The same type of activity and role for FIEP is also foreseen with the implementation of the EPPD. So it might be that in the near future we will have another webinar on photovoltaic panels. It might be that the FIEP members will receive documents to be reviewed and to comment upon. This has we don't know yet what the actual concrete measures will be, but it has been already agreed with colleagues in DG Ener that this platform will be involved in the development of the guidance that they need to provide under the context of EPPD directive. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you all very much. We're going to move to our question and answer session. So speakers, I kindly ask that you all come to the front and take a seat. Because our session is hybrid for questions, we will pass around a mic because without the microphone, people online will not hear you. And for those of you online, thank you for listening. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Francesca will be posing your questions to the panel. Okay. Thank you all. And I will stand here because I have to also be with the mic. We will start off in the room. Do we have any questions? Please raise your hand and we will come over.
Yes, my name is Leo de Witte from the Netherlands Institute of Public Safety. I have a question for Eric Guillaume. I think it's very, very good that they looked into the firefighting from the Grenfell report. But I also think that some things can be very harsh, because if you turn up at this site as a firefighter, how would you choose whether and what moment you change your strategy? Do you have any insight on that?
No, it's very interesting because I think it's not written by Martin Bobik on emotion. It's really written. He weighted all words to write it, and it's just to give an electroshock to firefighters in the way they write their tactics and so on, and in the way they give the dogma of non-evacuation of high-rise buildings. He says, no, you have to go deeper in the analysis, and it don't necessarily give the tools. So I think there's really a job to do, and it could be harmonized at European level, because the problematic is the same for everybody, to define how to make the choice to evacuate or not. And I think here we see that for Grenfell, but tomorrow when we start to have a high-rise building with root structure, for example, it will be the same problematic. Do you evacuate? Do you evacuate in a delay? Or do you evacuate level by level and so on? And some are working on their own tactics, but I think there's a need of harmonization. And
so there needs to be work done in better understanding and better making this decision making when and how, because I guess there's not enough information on the scene.
Yeah, it's not the objective of the report to give the solution, just to say you made that wrong.
You have to work at it.
You have to work on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the room? If not, we'll take Francesca a question online, and then I have some questions as well.
Yes, there is a question online. Could you please comment on bio-based flame retardant developments in the EU, the market and the major barriers to their application in the construction sectors?
Okay, so I think maybe Thomas, this is for you, maybe just to talk about pinfa and bio-based flame retardants and the future. It's on the innovative side.
Yeah, bio-based materials are playing a more and more important role, not only bio-based flame retardants, but also bio-based material in construction. So, for example, wood is having more and more important roles in taller buildings, and there are many composites around which are containing bio-based materials. So the challenge is to have the right flame retardant material, flame retardants to protect these bio-based building materials. So that's the first challenge we are having. The second challenge, of course, is to develop flame retardants which are bio-based. And we are all aware of this issue, and we are all aware of this challenge, and as well of possible benefits doing this. And yeah, pinfa is looking at this, and we are considering having potential projects on it, but it's not yet developed. But for sure, that's something which are maybe now in the small baby shoes, but will be a more important issue in future.
Thank you very much. Thomas? I'm looking around the room. Okay. If you have a question online, then we'll take it.
Yeah, so I think this is for you, Eric. Do you think that a fire like the Grenfell or the Lakenhall could happen in Europe? And is there a role for smoke evacuation hoods in the fire safety?
There are two questions. No, for the first one, I will say yes. Even if after Grenfell, a lot of countries changed their regulation or took importance of that. The problem is that these regulations apply only to new buildings, and there's a building stock. And everywhere in Europe, you have still buildings with the same kind of constructive system that are in place, and they are not necessarily treated or partially treated at present time. So it's really a question. In UK, for example, they put a fund on that, and imagine there's also a question of real estate and value of the apartments. If you are in a tower that has been refurbished, and then your apartment has no value anymore because of that, it's very important. I cited during the presentation some recent examples also. The Spanish one from Valencia, but there have been also another one in Spain just previously, Ambar Tower in Madrid. Same kind of material. Hopefully the fire started from the top, and so it was a downward propagation, but it's exactly the same problematic. And it's because they changed the regulation in Spain, but at the time they built all this building, it was allowed and there was no requirement on the facade. We can cite the same in Italy. I cited Torre del Mar in Milano with a similar fire. I can cite also that, for example, in France, we have a very strict regulation for high-rise buildings, but for dwelling, if you are under 50 meters, the regulation was weak at that time. And so you can use the same kind of materials and build a building that will just have 4 stories less. So, but the problem will be the same.
Thank you. Maybe more practical, also here a question, how can we get the report, the Grenfell report?
Oh, everything is available online. You just have to Google it. You will find very quickly. But all documents, all the experts report, all the auditions, everything is public. It's really a public inquiry. And you will see, as I said, the interview, for example, of the chief firefighter of London when she has to admit that she made that wrong. So it's something very, very intense. You have also all the details on all fatalities and so on. So it's really something, in my culture, for example, in France, it will never be public.
Thank you.
Opinion? Okay. We have a question.
Hi, my name is Finian Joyce from the European Fire Safety Alliance. I have a question for Heike. Heike, we spoke yesterday about the FEEP, the Fire Information Exchange Platform, and what a great forum it is potentially to attract the key policymakers that have an impact, that can make an impact in terms of the improvements in fire safety. Is there a possibility that the FEEP could meet again in person at any time in the future, rather than online through webinars?
I think the short-term future for FIEP meetings is online, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to have in-person meetings as well. Another thing is, and which has been a little bit of challenge for FIEP activities, is that we would need to figure out a right way to attract also the core policymakers from the member states. They have been a little bit hesitant maybe to contribute. There are some exceptions to that, but the contributions and the active participation from the member state authorities would be more than welcome in FIEP.
Yes, because I remember I attended the very first meeting of the FIEP in October 2017, and every member state was represented at the highest level, and it was a really powerful event. So to refocus priorities in terms of fire safety, everybody was there after Grenfell. So if that could be repeated, it would be a very powerful forum. Yeah.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see any hands. I will add an additional question, one for Christoph and one for Susanna, but I'll read it out so you can then just answer back to back. We've heard a lot of really interesting presentations, all highlighting the importance of fire safety to this community. And Christoph, if you had to summarize or give priority to how to address these challenges effectively, what would you give priority to right now?
So thank you very much for this question. I already mentioned in my presentation that in fact all the priorities for the on fire safety for the European Union were defined in the European Fire Safety Action Plan. In fact, we defined five challenges, five main challenges. But we also proposed to each of these challenges, we proposed also some actions which should improve the fire safety in this particular area. So, for example, if somebody asks me which one would be the most important, it's of course difficult to say because all of them are important. But if I need to point just one, probably it would be the leading topic of this year edition of the European Fire Safety Week, namely the fire safety of the most vulnerable groups. And for this particular one, we proposed also some concrete actions which would improve situation in this area. And first of all, we proposed to establish the European approach to the fire safety of the most vulnerable people, especially elderly people 65 plus, because they are overrepresented as fire victims, but also children, but also people with mental and physical disabilities, and with special focus on those who live in poverty and substandard housing, and of course focusing mainly on safe escape from the fire and difficult word to me to pronounce, survivability from the fire. This is the first first point. The second point we discussed this morning during the morning session, to improve and to increase the use of fire safe upholstered furniture and mattresses. This point is also very important, and probably the final one would be the making smoke alarms, let's say, more common in European homes, because as soon as we are, let's say, alarmed at the beginning of the fire, we have a bigger chance to safely escape the building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christoph. And our last question for Susanna before we close. So we've heard today a lot about fire deaths, fire injuries. We've seen various fire tests shown to all of us. And you presented on the increase in fire load, but you also correlated this to, I'm not going to use the word positive, although I've expressed it verbally, but you showed some encouraging news whereby the increase in load does not necessarily mean we're also multiplying the casualties. Could you maybe just briefly tell us some of the highlights of why that is so? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, as I showed at my last slide, we haven't seen corresponding increase in number of fatalities and fires despite that increase in fire load and material flammability. I mentioned what are the key factors, like improved fire safety codes and building regulation, advances in fire detection and suppression system, also increased public awareness, also enhanced firefighting technology. But I would use this opportunity to actually point out some issues. So we are improving, but for example, in Serbia, we have a lot of problems regarding all of these aspects that I mentioned, and I would tackle fire safety regulations and building codes. For example, when we want in Serbia to improve energy efficiency of building, the measure that we usually propose is to add additional insulation layer on facade or to change windows. When we are doing that, our regulation are saying that we must not endanger fire safety, but only of that part of the building that is the subject of the renovation. So in that case, we have to assess the fire safety of building facade only. And we all know that fire starts in the building most of the time, not on the facade. So I think that is very important to, when we are proposing measures for energy efficiency improvement, we also must consider fire safety measures and propose fire safety measures that would be implemented on the in the whole building, not only the facade.
Thank you very much. So yes, a very big thank you to all of you for joining us today. A final round of applause to our speakers. Yep, we've heard from 5 outstanding speakers who shared their expertise on key fire safety topics. Also, a special thanks to the European Fire Safety Alliance for bringing us all together. A week dedicated to fire safety is giving us all the opportunity to come, to exchange, and to build. For our online participants, thank you very much for your engagement. And would like to thank Francesca Filippini, who expertly moderated the session. Thank you, Francesca. As we conclude, let's all take these ideas forward and continue to work and collaborate together. And yeah, please continue to participate in European Fire Safety Weeks. Fire Safety Week, there are lots of events coming up. We close our session, but stick around because BSEF has another exciting session right after. With that, thank you all, and yeah, let's continue.